In the blistering summer of 1984, the city of Steelhaven was a place of unspoken rules and rigid, invisible walls. The sun beat down on the railroad tracks that divided the city, a straight shot of rust and splintered wood that served as a shortcut through the town's unspoken boundaries. For 16-year-old Arthur, life was defined by the working-class streets of the East Side, a place where kids knew the value of $1 because they rarely had one. On the other side of the city sat the Heights, a world of manicured lawns and wealthy families that felt like a different country. On June 8th, Arthur and his brother crossed that line, heading toward a bowling alley where the two worlds occasionally mashed together. It was there that Arthur saw her, Zena. She was standing by a friend's car, her eyes catching the summer sun in a way that made the noisy, sun-baked world go silent for a heartbeat. Their connection was immediate, sparked by a flurry of kisses behind the glowing lights of an arcade game. But the reality of Steelhaven was cold. Arthur was a black teenager from the mills. Zena was a white girl from the affluent district. Their love was forced onto telephone wires, where Arthur would change his voice, pitching it higher to sound like the boys from her neighborhood, just to get past the gatekeepers of her home. When the truth finally emerged, Zena's family declared an all-out war. They utilized every weapon they had: isolation, clinical evaluations, and physical discipline to sever the bond. The pressure was so intense that a judge eventually handed Arthur a 10-year sentence, a punishment designed to ensure the two would drift apart forever. Yet, through the bars of a cell, Arthur held on to a glowing dream he had seen a year before, a vision of a glowing woman and a boy that told him the fight was far from over. By the early 1990s, the teenagers had become adults, finally uniting as husband and wife in a small duplex ceremony on October 17, 1992. But the stability they sought was elusive. Arthur found himself haunted by the ghost of his past. Every time he sought a career in fields he loved, like car audio or technology, the system remembered his record and slammed the door. The struggle to provide for a growing family led to moments of deep desperation. In a world that refused him a seat at the table, Arthur fell back into destructive habits, eventually becoming entangled in identity theft to keep the utilities paid. He believed he had left that life behind until a morning in 2004, when a police knock, high, hard, and final, echoed through his home. The door was rammed off its hinges by a task force of local and federal agents. In an instant, Arthur was on the floor, his living room swarming with badges from the Secret Service and postal inspectors, while his sick son and wife were led from their beds. He was charged with 20 federal counts of fraud, crimes committed by another individual who had used the knowledge Arthur had foolishly shared. The stakes were absolute. He was facing 20 years in a federal cell. The prosecution offered a deal for 7 years if he would only admit guilt, but Arthur refused. He had promised Zena he was done with prison, and he was not going to buy his freedom with a lie. He sat in the shadow of the law for months, waiting for a trial while his family lived in a house that had been turned into a crime scene. In October 2004, the massive stone doors of the courthouse loomed over Arthur as his trial began. The government's case, once thought to be an ironclad fortress, began to crumble as charge after charge was dropped. Only a single count remained for the jury to weigh, and the silence in the room was a vacuum as the verdict was read. Not guilty. Arthur was acquitted, walking out of that grand building as a free man, into a sunlight that finally felt like it belonged to him. He promised Zena that the law would never have a reason to knock on their door again, a vow he would keep for the rest of his life. But justice in the courtroom did not mean an end to the trials of life. The years that followed were marked by a different kind of war. Arthur faced a prostate cancer diagnosis in 2017 that stole his health and his confidence. In 2020, he stared down death in a COVID-19 ward, inches away from a ventilator, while others around him succumbed. They faced the humiliation of evictions, the instability of job losses, and the pain of starting over in their 50s, often moving back to the very homes where they had once sought refuge as children. Yet, after 40 years, the girl from the bowling alley parking lot remained. They had been separated by steel walls, by federal laws, and by their own human failings. but the glowing dream had never faded. Arthur Vance was no longer just a name in a file. He was a survivor. Justice was served not just by a jury, but by the resilience of a love that refused to be extinguished. The dream of the glowing woman and the boy was finally, fully real.